So I worked for an advertising agency in London, and the client was Big Pharma, and we were doing innovation. And innovation around pharma, around patients, is tricky in the best of times. And I said every good idea that we had was always attempted to be killed by the three knives. The three knives were legal, regulatory, and compliance. And then the last year, I worked for an offshoot, a freestanding entity of a bank. And I got a fourth knife, and the fourth knife was called risk. So legal, regulatory, compliance, and risk became the killers of all ideas. How do you help an organization move from, as you say, regulatory or bureaucratic trolls to bureaucratic enablement? And then as the cherry on the cake, because I'm afraid this might be your last question we have time for, please tell us the story of red tape.
Okay. I think you said the key word yourself there, risk. We put a lot of obstacles in the way of innovation because innovation is risky by nature. When you're trying something new, you don't have any, past to rely on. So you're always speculating about the innovation and how it's going to change your business or how it's going to succeed. So you put controls in place to manage that risk. So there are a couple of ways you can fix that or improve that situation. For me, the biggest one is reducing the risk. So if there's less risk, you need less bureaucracy and less people saying no to everything. And there are ways you can reduce risk. One is to work with minimum viable products and then work incrementally after that and stage your funding so you're not fully investing in the innovation at first. You're waiting for it to prove itself, or to have a portfolio of innovations and only invest in the ones that seem the most promising after you get started with them. Those are risk mitigating. The automated controls and guardrails I talked about before, those can be very risk mitigating. Working in the cloud, to my AWS position, hugely risk mitigating, because if you're working, let's say, in your own data center, when you want to try something new, you're going to spend a lot of money up front to develop the capabilities, to get the infrastructure into your data center, things like that. All of that is at risk if it turns out the idea doesn't work out. So that's a very highly risky environment. Whereas if you work in the cloud, you can get access to infrastructure quickly, try whatever it is to prove out your idea. If it doesn't work out, you just dispose of the infrastructure and stop paying for it. If you need different infrastructure, you can change it at any moment. If you need advanced capabilities like machine learning or augmented reality, virtual reality, you don't have to spend a long time developing them yourself with all the risk that involves. You just get them off the shelf as building blocks in the cloud. So again, hugely risk mitigating. So the first trick to getting that bureaucracy out of your way is to reduce the risk of it. The second trick is to value agility and innovation because they have business value per se. Mm-hmm. So we often don't evaluate. So for example, if you're going to make changes to your IT code and infrastructure and so on, so that you will be more agile in the future, or so that you'll be able to make changes more quickly in the future, how do you make the business case for that? How do you establish the value of that? Because you don't know what kind of return you're going to get from it. In fact, you don't even know how you're going to use the agility. Nevertheless, it's clear that it has value, being able to respond more quickly in the future, and the other things you get with agility, that has value to a business. It's just that you can't project it the same way that you project other business cases. It's more, as I explain in various places in my books, it's more like valuing a financial option. It's like a call option, or it's a risk reducer. You can think of it a few different ways. But in order to avoid that no-saying bureaucracy, you have to establish that there is value, business value, in saying yes to things, and in saying yes in general, and having a process that lets new innovations get tried out. And that's a little hard for companies to get used to sometimes. Oh, and you asked me about red
red tape.
Yes, the red tape.
So I learned a lot of things when I was researching this book. I learned a lot about, Napoleon and bureaucracy, and ancient Egypt and bureaucracy. And one of the things I learned along the way that I shared in the book is where the expression red tape comes from. And obviously, red tape is one of those things we hate about bureaucracy. Its origin, though, is not so horrible. It actually dates back to the Emperor Charles V, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, the King of Spain, and he had a few other titles that I can't remember. This was in the 16th century, and he instituted this really big innovation in government, which is that for his important laws, instead of tying the scroll up with string, he would put red tape around it so everybody would know it was important. So that's where red tape comes from, actually.